Chapter 2, Organizational Culture, Socialization, and Mentoring. This chapter will help you better understand how managers can use organizational culture as a competitive advantage. After defining and discussing the context of organizational culture, we examine 1. The dynamics of organizational culture, 2. The organizational socialization process, and 3. The embedding of organizational culture through mentoring. Each chapter begins with a list of objectives that you should be able to understand and discuss after you have completed reading the material. At the end of reading Chapter 2, you should be able to discuss the elements of organizational culture and describe general types of organizational culture and their associated characteristics. You should be able to summarize the process by which organizations change their culture. After reading about Feldman's model of organizational socialization, you should be able to describe 3 phases. You should also be able to discuss the tactics used to socialize employees, and finally, to explain the types of networks derived from a model of mentoring. What is organizational culture? Formally defined, organizational culture is a set of shared and implicit assumptions that a group holds. These assumptions determine how the group perceives, considers, and reacts to its various environments. There are several characteristics associated with organizational culture. Culture is passed on to new employees through a process of socialization. Culture influences how employees behave at work, and it operates at different levels within and throughout the organization. Organizational culture is shaped by 4 components that are usually referred to as the antecedents. These 4 factors are the founder's values, the industry and business environment, the national culture within which the organization resides, and the senior leader's vision. In Figure 2-1, you'll recall the framework for understanding organizational culture and its influence on individual, group, and organizational behavior. Consider the opening vignette on Apple's innovative culture. How would you describe the organizational culture at Apple now that you've read about the characteristics and components of organizational culture? Refer to Figure 2-1 again. You'll see that the organizational culture has 3 fundamental layers: observable artifacts, espoused values, and basic assumptions. Let's first discuss observable artifacts. The observable artifacts in an organization consist of the physical element of the culture, such as the manner of dress, the jargon used, the myths and stories, ceremonies, parking spaces, and the physical decorations in the facilities. For example, your text refers to the Ritz-Carlton Hotel. Their culture is focused on exceeding customers' expectations. To reinforce this culture, the company uses weekly meetings and wow stories to relay guest satisfaction tales. Each weekly winner wins a cash prize. Imagine the delight of the laundry attendant who won with her story of diving into a dumpster to retrieve a young guest's stuffed gingerbread man. Next, let's discuss espoused values. We must formally define what we mean by the concept. For our purposes, values are the concepts or beliefs that pertain to desirable end states, transcend situations, guide selection of behavior, and are ordered by relative importance. In organizations, we focus on the espoused values that are usually found in the stated values and norms preferred by that organization. For example, in the Skills and Best Practices box that highlights Williams-Sonoma, we learn that the organization's espoused values focus on employees, customers, shareholders, ethical behavior, and the environment. This information is shared publicly through their corporate values document, posted on their company website. In addition to the espoused values, we are concerned with enacted values. These are those values and norms that actually are exhibited by the organization or employees' behavior. We can directly observe these values through the behavior of employees and the organization's leaders. Enacted values may differ from the values an organization espouses. Recall the example in the text about Citibank and its merger with Solomon. Though the espoused value of Citibank was one of unity, the enacted values of the employees of Solomon Brothers conflicted with that value. It is important for managers to reduce gaps between espoused values and enacted values because they can significantly influence employee attitudes and organizational performance. How should the manager of the former Solomon Brothers employees who continued to answer the telephone, Solomon, react? What can he or she do to reduce the gap between espoused and enacted values? In contrast, what would you do if you were an employee who did not feel comfortable enacting the values that your organization espouses? The third and final layer of organizational culture is basic assumptions. Assumptions are critically important to an organization's culture. Basic assumptions are the values that have become taken for granted and guide behavior in the organization. Google, as an example, is noted for its innovative culture, which has elicited Google envy from hopeful future employees and onlookers. Employees at Google, therefore, would be shocked to see management act in ways that did not value creativity and innovation. It is a basic assumption held by employees that certain perks and managerial behavior is expected, whether it is written down or not. Organizational culture serves at least four very important functions. Figure 2-2 shows these four functions. 1. It provides a sense of identity for members in the organization. 2. It gives a sense of collective commitment through shared values. 3. Provides stability for the social and organizational system. And 4. It provides the device for members to make sense of what occurs within the organization. Your text shows how each of these functions of organizational culture relates to the example of Southwest Airlines. Can you describe the examples that were mentioned for each? The Competing Values Framework is a framework for categorizing the types of organizational culture. It provides a practical way for managers to understand, measure, and change organizational culture. Refer to Figure 2-3 in your text to see that it is based on two continuums of organizational effectiveness. One axis pertains to whether an organization focuses its attentions and efforts on internal dynamics or outward towards its external environment and its customers and shareholders. The second axis shows an organization's preference for flexibility or control and stability. These axes create four types of organizational cultures that are based on different core values and criteria for assessing organizational effectiveness. The first is the clan culture. This culture is characterized as having an internal focus and valuing flexibility. This type of organization encourages collaboration between employees and is committed to having a cohesive work group and high job satisfaction. The adhocracy culture has an external focus and values flexibility. This type of culture fosters creation of innovative products and services by being adaptable, creative, and fast to respond to changes in the marketplace. Centralized power and authority would not be effective structures in an adhocracy. These organizations promote creativity, innovation, and knowledge sharing. The market culture has a strong external focus and values stability and control. This type of culture focuses on the customer over employee development and satisfaction because the goal of managers is to drive towards productivity, profits, and customer satisfaction. This culture rewards employees who deliver results. The hierarchy culture has an internal focus and a formalized, structured work environment. It will tend to have reliable internal processes and control mechanisms. This categorization shows how an organization's core values affect its culture. Many companies struggle with attempting to embody conflicting values. The text gives the example of Nortel Networks and their efforts to encourage innovation while also implementing Six Sigma quality processes. We know that organizational culture is important. The outcomes of the different types of organizational culture indicate four lessons. First, that culture is significantly correlated with employee behavior and attitudes. Second, there appears to be a congruence between individuals' values and the organization's values. This was particularly true when associated with organizational commitment, job satisfaction, turnover intention, and actual leaving the organization. Interestingly, a third lesson is that organizational culture does not predict a clear pattern of relationships between organizational culture and the outcomes such as service, quality, customer satisfaction, and performance. Finally, we learn that a major reason that mergers and acquisitions fail is largely due to incompatible organizational cultures, values, norms, and beliefs. Organizational cultures can change. Changing cultures involves a teaching process where members teach each other about the organization's preferred values, beliefs, expectations, and behaviors. This is accomplished by using one or more of the 11 mechanisms listed in the text. These include formal statements of the organization's philosophy, mission, and vision, helping to clarify and communicate the culture of the organization. The actual design of the physical space and buildings provides insight as to the culture of the organization. Each organization has a language of its own that can be seen in its acronyms and slogans. Managers and supervisors have the opportunity for deliberate role modeling, training, and coaching. Criteria for promotions, rewards, and other status symbols reflect organizational values. Continuing with the list of mechanisms for changing culture, we see that stories, legends, and myths about key people and events help further embed the culture. Individuals carry the culture forward by repeating the stories to new employees. The activities that matter in an organization also provides information about its culture. Those activities that are valued and measured are those that tend to be repeated and are, therefore, embedded further into the culture. Recruiting, selecting, and developing new people also provides the vehicle for the organization to embed its culture, values, and norms. As we know, organizational culture is partially embedded in members through organizational socialization. Formally defined, it is the process by which a person learns the values, norms, and required behaviors which permit him to participate as a member of the organization. There are different phases to the socialization process. The first phase is the anticipatory socialization phase. This occurs before an individual joins the organization and involves the information people learn about, such as careers, occupations, professions, and the organization itself. The second phase of organizational socialization is the encounter. Here the employee learns what the organization is truly like and has the ability to reconcile unmet expectations. A process that facilitates socialization is called onboarding, which are programs aimed at helping employees integrate, assimilate, and transition to new jobs. The third phase in organizational socialization is change and acquisition. It is here that the employee masters the important tasks and roles and adjusts to the work group's values and norms. Research in the area of socialization has yielded useful practical advice for managers. Managers should avoid a haphazard approach to socialization and ensure that the process is clear and consistent. Managers should play a key role during the encounter phase. Managers should pay particular attention to the socialization of diverse employees. Mentoring is widely used in organizations to help socialize new employees as they adjust to new roles, processes, and positions. Mentoring is the process of forming and maintaining developmental relationships between a mentor and a junior person. Let's review the functions of mentoring, the role of developmental networks, and the personal and organizational implications involved. Functions. Mentoring can address several important issues to assure successful transition of employees into organizations. Mentoring can serve career functions through coaching and challenging assignments, and can also serve psychosocial functions in terms of role modeling, counseling, and the establishment of friendships. Developmental networks. In order for mentoring to be effective and successful, it should ensure that the diversity of developmental relationships reflects the variety of people within the network that the individual will use for assistance. There are two subcomponents to mentoring. The first deals with the number of different people that are directly involved with the network relationships. The second involves the various social systems from which the network relationship stems. Personal and organizational implications. Key personal implications to consider include consistency between your goals and the network available. The quality of the interpersonal relationship will affect the developer's willingness to provide assistance, and it is important to put effort into finding a mentor. Organizations will find that providing mentoring will enhance the effectiveness of organizational communication, as well as the obvious benefit of employee development. Organizations and employees can ensure that their mentoring networks are effective. Successful organizations emphasize developing strong mentors, providing effective 360-degree feedback, commitment to assessing and revising the mentor network, and accepting the need for change. These suggestions can also be found in the Skills and Best Practices box at the conclusion of this chapter. This concludes the lecture on Chapter 2. Apply the concepts that you've learned in the end of chapter material, and take a practice quiz at the Online Learning Center, www.mhhe.com/KINICKIOB4E.